Coffee ready yet, or should I come over there and help you threaten the pot?
Oh, I've had words with it already. Where is everybody? I've been here for 15 minutes.
Oh, well, Cassie and I were at the airport saying goodbye to Jenny, and Norm's at the university supervising some interviews.
I forgot. Jenny's off to California?
No, Oregon. 3 days of writers' conference.
Yeah. Cup of coffee?
I thought you'd never ask. And why don't you tell me what has you so upset? You're pacing up and down like a caged-in animal.
Teachers.
Teachers? Didn't even know you were taking any classes.
Oh, I'm not. It's my oldest son, Mark. It's his teacher, Mrs. Jones. He brought home a progress report, and I'm supposed to sign it and return it.
Fred, somehow I know you're not here to borrow my pen.
No, I'm here because this progress report is driving me up the wall. I can't understand what she's really saying. Now, just listen to this.
Go ahead.
Hi, Cassie.
Oh, hi.
Your child's grade reflects his ample initiative and creativity. However, he seems over-involved in peer group activity, causing difficulty in receiving authoritative instructions from leadership personnel.
Ooh, sounds serious. Did your son kill someone today?
How would I know? This is all gobbledygook as far as I'm concerned. I can't even figure out who she's writing this to.
Oh, let me have a look at it, Fred.
I'd hoped you would. Coffee, Cassie?
Oh, no thanks. I've got to get back to my own work. Jenny said she left a memo on my desk for me. Excuse me.
Fred, your son's teacher is using jargon.
Huh?
The language of the specialist. It probably makes perfect sense to another educator or counselor at school, but...
Yeah, but it makes a parent like me go crazy. What does it mean? You can give it to me straight.
Well, over-involved in peer group activity means your son talks too much. And difficulty in receiving authoritative instructions means he doesn't listen to his teacher.
What a relief.
That he doesn't listen?
No, that it isn't worse. Now, why couldn't she put that in normal language?
Well, it doesn't look as if she had her audience in mind. But specialized jargon is important in a lot of professions, Fred. It helps communications. Two experts can use common terms in working out a problem.
Yeah, well, jargon is useless as far as I'm concerned. No one should ever use it, period.
Not everyone agrees, Fred. Sometimes jargon is okay.
Says who?
Now that you mention it, says some real experts. I was going to look at this tape, and I think you should see it, too. See, sometimes jargon is okay, and sometimes it's not. It's knowing when to use it that makes the difference. Watch this.
The natural inclination of people is to use words to impress the reader. In other words, they want to use words that make the reader think that the writer is very intelligent, brilliant, has a firm grasp of reality, and things of this sort. And so what happens is that they lapse into very long sentences. I said good technical writing is clear and it is concise. It is concise in that it eliminates redundancies, it eliminates wordiness, it cuts out unnecessary words. It is concise, it is to the point, it is clear in the sense that the language that it uses is clear. We hear an awful lot these days about jargon. Jargon is nothing more than the technical shorthand used by people to communicate. And if I'm an engineer and I'm talking to another engineer, I'll use this jargon. It's very difficult to talk in engineering terminology without having a shorthand version, much like a mathematical symbol. But if I'm an engineer and you are an accountant, and I use my engineering talk with you, or you use your accounting talk with me, we're not communicating. And there's nothing very clear about what we are saying, so that jargon in itself is not bad. The problem with jargon is when it is inappropriately used. That is, when the writer fails to understand what the reader understands. In other words, what is it that the reader knows in terms of the language that the writer is going to use?
The Document Design Center in Washington, D.C. helps people write better in order to communicate better. One of the major issues they work on with government officials such as these and with others who come there to improve their writing skills is when and how to use jargon and technical terms and when not to.
Technical jargon is appropriate when you know that the other people in the audience are people from exactly the same technical field who use that same jargon in exactly the same way that you do. For example, if a mathematician had to write all the things that they write in equations out in prose, I don't think the other mathematicians would understand it. The mathematical formulas serve a purpose. The problem is that when you get out into a job, you're almost never talking only to other people, who are in exactly that same field. For example, even if you're in an engineering firm and you're writing about engineering, you're going to also be talking to managers who are not engineers, in many cases to lawyers, in many cases to lay people outside of the company. So your technical jargon isn't an efficient or effective way of writing because you're trying to reach more than one audience.
Writing and life itself would be a lot simpler if jargon and technical terms could be eliminated altogether. But in legal documents and in scientific writing, that just isn't always possible. The Document Design Center offers a strategy for using jargon on those occasions.
If you absolutely have to use the technical word because there is no other replacement, then you can often define it, either in a parenthetic statement, just putting parentheses next to it, or I've seen some lovely insurance examples lately because I've been working on a lot of life insurance material where they say things like, if you don't pay when your premium is due, you can pay any time in the next 31 days. We call this the grace period. That's a nice way of introducing a technical term that the insurance people have to have there, but explaining it to the policyholder who doesn't know what grace period means. And so you can meet both audiences' needs at once. I really caution, however, against always believing that the technical term is necessary. I find that people tend to really want to hang on to their technical jargon when it isn't necessary.
See, it looks like your son, teacher, has hung on to some jargon when it really wasn't necessary.
Yeah, you know, I could write a letter that would, I guess that teacher doesn't have any more time to waste than I do, so I'd better be clear and direct, for Mark's sake.
Cassie, maybe you could help Fred find that direct approach?
Well, I'd like to, but can I do it later?
Later? I have to have this answer back by tomorrow.
Well, I'll try to find a way, but I made some other promises.
What is it, Cassie?
Well, it's this memo. Have you seen it?
Oh, from Norman Jenny.
Hey, look, I can see that both of you have work to do, so how about if you read the note once I write it?
Oh, that sounds fine, but you're welcome to stay, Fred.
Oh, no thanks. I have to see the color separator this morning, check the color keys for the new flyer. If the PMS doesn't register exactly, then I'm going to have to cut a new mask by hand. I'll see you.
We really shouldn't let him get away with that.
Get away with what? His son may be off the hook, but is Fred planning a bank job?
I don't think so. But I don't think we'll have to look far for examples of misdirected communication. It seems we're all specialists at something.
Yep, I've got the same problem Fred had with this memo. See, I don't speak TV jargon fluently yet.
What's the problem?
Well, see, Jenny and Norm outlined their ideas on word strategy for this program, but the way they put it doesn't speak to me. Listen to this.
Okay.
Oh, brother, what does this mean? P.S. Since our telecourse is in a large sense a species of phoebe, but not kidvid, remember that we have to deliver more than talking heads on a studio VCR. Think about supered subtitles or a standard English voiceover to make things clearer.
Pretty thick TV jargon.
And this is supposed to make things clearer.
Here, let me have a look. Phoebe is a form of pay cable television, so they must mean the telecourse is like that because students pay to see it. And Kidvid is the nickname for children's television, so what they mean is that this lesson is directed to adults and not children. Talking heads are screen images of someone seen from the shoulders up, talking. And, of course, you know VCR, video cassette recorder. Supered means superimposed writing on the screen. And voiceover is the sound of an unseen speaker while you're viewing something else.
I repeat, what does it mean?
Well, it means that since our telecourse is for adults who pay good money for it, we shouldn't look to plain speech-making, but should show examples of misused words and translate them somehow to standard English on the screen.
Now, why didn't they just say that?
I think they may have been pulling your leg a bit.
Pulling your leg, isn't that a euphemism for putting me on?
Yes, and putting me on is a euphemism for making fun of someone.
Well, no matter how you say it, it seems that I am the straight woman in this little game.
Well, why don't you take advantage of this opportunity?
Opportunity?
Well, you're looking for jargon, cliches, and euphemisms, right?
Uh-huh.
Norman and Jenny are having little fun, so why don't you take their game, put it in the script, and make it part of your game?
Oh, I can just see it now. A brand new game show. The $64,000 cliche.
Sorry I'm so late.
Oh, hi, Norm.
Good afternoon.
I know you've all been wondering when old word strategy Feldman would come in. You ready to get organized?
Oh, yeah, sure. As you can see, Gwen and I have just been moping around without a purpose.
Aimless without you, Norman.
Well, you could relax now because I'm here and I have done my homework. Now, let me tell you how I see this program. What we've got to do is concentrate on three major misuses of words. That's cliches, jargon, and euphemisms.
We've had 2 good discussions
Now, not
already.
only are
though.
these 3 kinds of language use responsible for a lot of problems in communication, but they're usually pretty funny, too.
Oh, yeah. We've been laughing about your,
Now, I see this program as a kind of show-and-tell exercise. You know, we'll bring in all kinds of real-world examples and then tell what they might mean if they weren't written that way.
What about a little definition? And shouldn't we tell why these are often poor strategies for communication?
Good point. Jenny and I discussed that before she left for Oregon. And, I'm going to be leaning on you, Cassie, in her absence to worry about definitions and theory because I see my main job is making this a practical program.
Then you'll be expecting Cassie to handle at least one segment pretty much on her own, right?
Oh, sure, I'm depending on it. After all, you're a colleague, right?
Right?
Cassie, why don't you show Norman what you found?
Okay. Norm, I've been thinking about the practical part of this theory, too. And I think we should find a way to show students why worrying about word strategy is important.
And? Did you find a way?
Well, I think so. Some of the interviews are pretty useful, but I think we'll have to expand on them. I thought that could be part of my contribution.
Right. And speaking of contributions, let me show you some of the stuff that I gathered together. Travel brochures, magazine ads, government reports.
You have any examples of business correspondence?
Not yet, but business writing will offer a really strong example of jargon misuse. It's usually the worst of all.
Hey, Norm, you've done so much already. Why don't you let me find an inter-office memo or something?
Well, okay. But it's got to be a gross miscommunication.
Oh, it will be, I promise.
Norman, you mentioned jargon, cliches, and euphemisms as ways of misusing words. What did you mean?
Here. You'll love this example that Stuart Chase came up with. I'll read a line from one of Franklin Roosevelt's speeches, and then you read Chase's translation, okay? I see 1/3 of the nation ill-housed, ill-clad, ill-nourished. Now you read the government version.
Okay. It is evident that a substantial number of persons within the continental boundaries of the United States have inadequate financial resources with which to purchase the products of agricultural communities and industrial establishments. It would appear that for a considerable segment of the population, possibly as much as 33.333% of the total, there are inadequate housing facilities, and an equally significant proportion is deprived of the proper types of clothing and nutriment.
A good example, but awful writing.
And a failure to communicate. Now, let me show you some cliches. This is a travel brochure from Hawaii. Aloha. Okay, let me read you the lead paragraph. No travel folder can show the sight for sore eyes that welcomes the tourist to Hawaii. But if you read between the lines and picture in your mind's eye a land so varied that it has been all things to all men, you'll understand this land of enchantment. Sounds pretty trite, doesn't it?
It sure does, but why call it failed communication?
Well, I don't think of this kind of writing as morally evil, just not useful. There's no precision to it at all.
Still, you can see why the writer let his cliches get out of control. Originally, those expressions were colorful and descriptive.
No doubt about it. All things to all men comes right out of the Bible. And A Sight for Sore Eyes was originally recommended as genteel speech by Jonathan Swift, a pretty fair writer.
But
These expressions have become so overused that they've become automatic phrases that people don't really pay attention to.
What do you mean by automatic?
Well, automatic phrases just naturally pop up into your mind and your conversation, like stereotypes or conditioned responses.
you've defined automatic as conditioned. I need examples.
Okay. I'll give you the beginning of a couple of phrases, and then you try to fill in the blanks. Okay, how about this one? Thick and...
Thick and thin.
See? Automatic. How about rank and...
Very poetic. Rank and file.
All right, let's try one a little bit longer. Here today...
Here today, gone tomorrow. I use these phrases myself sometimes.
But the point is that the conditional response has become a kind of shorthand for everyday speech. But when a phrase automatically pops into your mind when you're working on a written piece, that ought to set off an alarm.
Why?
Well, because writing is more deliberate than speaking, and a writer has time to revise and come up with an original turn of phrase. Clichés just don't belong in good writing.
They've worn out their welcome.
Giving up the ghost.
Worn as an old penny.
Exactly. Gone to the dogs. Oh, hi, Fred.
Am I interrupting?
No, Fred, come in.
I just wanted to read you my note.
What note?
Oh, Fred got a note from his son's teacher. It was written in educational jargon. Read us your answer, Fred.
Okay, now here we go. Now, I worked all morning on this. Dear Mrs. Jones, in your note, you verbalized your concern for the progress and welfare of my son with the greatest of clarity. It is unfortunate that his excellent grade is not matched by appropriate listening skills. It is my intention to see that he attends more courteously to those in authority in the future. Respectfully, Fred Gardner. How's that?
Ooh, Fred, good grief. Sounds like you're running for governor.
Hey, pretty impressive, huh?
Plenty of big words, but does it say what you want it to say, or do the euphemisms cover over the real message?
Euphemisms.
Yeah, you know, euphemisms.
No, I don't know.
Substitutes for words that are direct, such as, verbalized your concern for wrote me a note, and they're almost always longer and less precise than the words they replace.
Yes, and they make ideas seem less disturbing than they really are.
The military is famous for euphemisms. Do you know what a aerodynamic personnel decelerator is?
An aerodynamic personnel decelerator?
It's a parachute. Or how about an extended personnel inhibitor?
Who?
No, it's a what?
Okay, what?
It's a bayonet.
Well, did the Pentagon writers win many battles?
No, the war is usually over before the extended personnel inhibitors can be fixed.
Oh,
Well, about this, I didn't think that it was a good idea to make trouble for my kid.
Well, I can understand how you feel, Fred, but did you say what you meant?
No, not really.
no. Well, let me see what you did say. Okay, your first sentence means, your note clearly expresses your concern about my son. Did it?
No, you had to translate it for me.
Second sentence means, his listening skills are not as good as his grade. How about that?
Well, that's true, and I would like him to show respect for his teacher, not because she's leadership personnel, but because she's a concerned person.
So let's look at the third sentence. I intend to make him pay more attention to authority figures in the future.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not saying what I mean.
See, that's why I said you sounded like a politician. They never talk when they can verbalize.
Or scream when they could vocalize.
And a lie is never anything more serious than an erroneous report.
Yeah, it looks like it's back to the drawing board for me.
To coin a phrase.
Nor means you just used a cliche for starting over.
No, look, I'm just beginning to understand euphemisms. Don't throw cliches at me. But that's another can of worms.
Oh, the examples are fascinating. And they'll help students to recognize specific problems with word usage. Just be sure that you've included everything.
I know.
Oh, that was Fred. He wants us to listen to his next draft in about 5 minutes.
Oh, great.
We've got examples, interviews.
Right, so what are we missing?
Well, we ought to be sure to define the troublemakers.
Sounds pretty dry.
Well, I'm not talking about technical definitions. I'm talking about general definitions, such as jargon can be defined as specialized language of a profession or occupation.
Euphemisms are a way to make negative words or ideas seem more neutral or acceptable.
Cliches are trite, overused expressions that have worn out their meaning by becoming automatic.
Honestly, that's all we need. We don't need fancier definitions than those.
Probably right.
Oh, I just remembered one more thing. Cassie, did you find an example from business writing?
Oh, yes, I have. It's an example from a professional writer, as a matter of fact. And I think it's a good example because it shows that even experts can fall into these traps sometimes.
Oh, it sounds great. You know, that kind of miscommunication really drives people up the wall. And any professional writer that uses jargon or cliches really ought to be nailed for it.
Oh, I sure agree with that. In fact,
Cassie, do you have the Janice Reddish interview to show us? She's the director of the Document Design Center in Washington.
It's here somewhere. She has a lot of experience helping people revise documents.
Oh. Don't they help revise government documents that are written in bureaucratic jargon?
Yes, their goal is to help people to write properly, the same as ours.
It seems to me that lawmakers have an unwritten rule never to use simple language when they can get away with using long words.
Right. But they'd never say it that way. They would say, in the information dissemination process, one never uses a unisyllabic interfacing device when the functional utilization of polysyllabalism falls within acceptable communication parameters. Where were we?
We were going to look at the Janice Reddish tape.
We were?
We are.
We do see problems on many different levels. First of all, really understanding the audience and purpose. Secondly, knowing how to organize. But thirdly, and very importantly, on the sentence and word level, where people looking at the models of writing that they have, that is, the documents that now exist, tend to write in a style that you can call bureaucratese or legalese or academese or organizationese, if you will, but a style that includes more nouns than verbs, that very seldom addresses the reader with pronouns, that uses a lot of jargon where it's inappropriate to use the jargon, that tries to use big words when really a very ordinary word would get the message across much more efficiently and effectively. What we're doing is changing from an attitude that the document existed kind of as a document on a shelf somewhere, and that its purpose is to actually communicate. And if you're going to communicate with people, then you have to use the language that your reader can read. Your real purpose in the real world is to get a message across to someone. You want something, you need to report something. It serves a purpose for you and for your reader. And the best way to do that, to get the message across, is not to waste the time of busy people. So that you want to start with your point, and you want to write it clearly and simply, instead of doing what we find many beginning writers in the job world doing, which is relating the whole narrative of everything that's happened up to the point of the point, and ending with what they want. Well, the executive or the supervisor isn't going to want to read that. They want to start at the beginning. So one of the important things to remember is that writing clearly gets your message across.
So, it can't be stressed enough that the writer needs to know his or her purpose.
Yes, and the first purpose of any writer is to communicate.
And overly technical language doesn't help to get the message across.
Not only doesn't help, but jargon, cliches, euphemisms are often barriers to communications in some circumstances.
Don't you mean all circumstances?
No. Engineering jargon is perfectly appropriate between two engineers.
Right, and euphemisms can be the better side of good taste in certain situations.
Oops, am I interrupting again? I just wanted to read you the revision of my note.
No, go ahead, Fred. Let's hear the note.
Okay. Well, I wanted to explain something first. Is that all right?
Oh, sure, it's all right. Besides, we owe you one, Fred.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to pass that to Cassie?
Oh, sure.
Thanks. Okay, I want you to know that I thought about what you said about my purpose, what I really wanted to say, and I tried not to use any weasel words in my note.
Great. Let's hear it.
Oh, no, wait a minute. I also thought about my audience. A teacher who was obviously concerned enough about my son to feel that he was worth a lot of education talk.
Does that mean you're writing back in educational jargon?
No, I haven't written it exactly the way that I would talk it, but I've tried to be honest, to encourage her, and not to overreact to what she wrote.
Well, that makes sense, Fred. After all, you've had the benefit of a translation and some time to revise your note based on audience and purpose.
Okay, now here's what I came up with. Dear Mrs. Jones, I am pleased to know my son's grades are still improving. I'm pleased, too, that you are working with him to improve his listening skills. I have talked with him about your note. He understands that I think his relationships with his friends are important, second only to listening to those teachers who care about his future. Sincerely, Fred Gardner.
That is excellent, Fred.
Clear to the point.
Gwen?
Most important of all, it's human, Fred.
Thanks to your help.
No, thanks for your help. You've proved just how important revision is to clear communication. And I think we're about ready to revise our own script.
We still need a good example of a business memo, don't we?
This may be just the time to present an award.
An award?
Yes, a special recognition for one of our own.
For what?
Well, the movies have the Oscars. TV has the Emmys. And now I take pride in presenting the Cassie, the first annual award for special technical effects and inter-office jargon. The envelope, please. Oh, this is so exciting. I can't wait. Okay. The nominees are the federal government, the military-industrial complex, and our own Norman Feldman.
What?
And now a sample from the winning memo. Since our telecourse is in a sense a species of Phoebe, but not Kidvid, remember that we have to deliver...
Oh, no.
For classical jargon, the winner is... Norman Feldman! Yay! Speech!
Well, I really don't know what to say.
Good.
I would like to thank Jennifer Lowry, who could not be here with us this evening, and, of course, I could have never achieved this award if it hadn't been for my parents. It is indeed a privilege to be standing before you, a rare honor, and as unaccustomed as I am
He
to
took it
public
pretty
speaking,
well,
I would like
didn't
to
he?
thank
Give him
my
another
assistant
3
director,
minutes
Mr.
and he'll be a
Paul.
cinch
And
for
I
the
just want everyone
cliche
to know
award, too.
that I am as pleased as punch to be here this evening.